Now, Market Day on the SBS On The Money podcast.
Hi everyone, it's your daily 10-minute business and finance news wrap for this Friday, the 6th of December 2024. The Australian share market fell today by 0.6%. With the details, I spoke with Yu Yi, Deputy Portfolio Manager at Blackmore Capital.
The market is under a bit of pressure today after recent, good runs, and it's primarily driven by sector-specific weakness. So to start with, technology is down about 1% as a sector. Now, this is not a big sector for ASX 200. It's roughly 3% of the market, but it sets a cautious tone. On top of that, energy sector is down 1% today. Commodities down 1% today. Now, commodity is about 20% of ASX 200, so that definitely translates more to the ASX 200 intraday movement. And with energy, oil prices are key factors here, because overnight, OPEC Plus just announced a delay in the reverse of a supply cut. So what's been happening is OPEC Plus has been in a supply cut since about May 2023. And ever since then, there's been a lot of extensions in stopping that cut or reverse of that cut, or you're understanding that as a supply increase. So on the surface, it's a bit contradictory because you think they're delaying a supply increase while the oil price is down, but in a way that set a tone for a cautious outlook for oil demand, which is why the oil price is slightly down today, translating to the energy sector's underperformance.
Still, the market's been up, especially after the US election. What's been driving this positive sentiment more broadly?
Yeah, so there's been a broader positive sentiment for a while, and you've sort of just pointed out one thing, which is a key factor. It's the US election. And I think there's definitely some stabilization post the US election result, which is about a month ago. And also because of, now after Donald Trump's victory, there is definitely a heightened expectation of, say, tax cut, deregulation. And all of that would actually contribute to corporate growth and profit growth. And what that means is analysts might be expecting higher EPS growth for 2025. And there's definitely a spillover effect for Australian market, plus some of the stocks that we have that actually got a global footprint with a decent exposure in US would benefit from that as well. On top of that, I think there's also resilience in the US economy. You look at the labor market. The last non-farm payroll was a surprise, upward surprise. And you look at the inflation has been moderating. And then at the same time, you've got productivity growth. It's continuing and fueled by areas like artificial intelligence. So there's a broader sense of optimism despite the uncertainties, because investors are thinking productivity is growing and opportunities are emerging.
Next week, we've got a few central banks meeting. I think we've got the ECB, the Bank of Canada also, but the one that impacts Australia directly is the RBA. I think there's likely to be no real change next week. But what's the market thinking in terms of when the next rate or the first rate cut will come?
That's right. I think across the market, most economists are expecting, no change for the next meeting. And in fact, when I look at the probability, there is a 98% likelihood of a no change, with a very small likelihood that the market expecting a 25 basis point cut for the next meeting. And I think what's going on now is the market is shifting that first cut to May or even end of 2025. So May to end of 2025 is probably the starting point where market is expecting the first cut to happen. And that's actually still heavily dependent on the economic data, because the RBA is balancing, managing inflation, but also a decreasing in productivity and the growth that we have.
Okay, what about Bitcoin? It reached 100,000 for the first time ever US yesterday. It's come off those highs at the moment. What's your take?
It has. Bitcoin's reached six figures, I think, first time ever. And this is definitely an important milestone, like a psychological milestone as well, for not only just the cryptocurrency community, but the broader investment market, because I think that certainly encourages or stimulates further understanding and knowledge of Bitcoin. And that could mean a bigger investor base. Now, the other thing that I think worth pointing out is, out of decades or hundreds of years of history, when we look at financial data, what we see is there is this pattern called volatility clustering, which means higher volatility or higher fluctuations usually follow higher fluctuations. And that's regardless of the direction. So historically speaking, when you have record highs, what tend to follow is either another record highs or maybe record low. And we've seen that with Bitcoin as well. You know, we've seen sharp, deep corrections after record highs. So I think it's important to stay cautious and keep that in the context.
All right, when looking at the market, any company news you're keeping an eye on today?
So today, Iluka is actually leading the loss of ASX 200. Iluka is a mineral sand producer that's also constructing Australia's first rare earth refinery called Eneabba in Western Australia. So this morning, they announced an additional 400 million funding in the form of a non-recourse loan from the Australian government. But the share price is down roughly 14% today. The partnership started really positively received by the market when Eneabba entered into a partnership with the Australian government, where the government is funding roughly 1.2 billion, with Iluka only contributing about 200 million in equity cash as well as its own stockpile. What happened then that turned the story to a different direction was late last year, Iluka realized that they need 1.7 to 1.8 billion rather than the 1.2 that they have from the Australian government. So they started another round of negotiation with the government, and that's been going on for a little while. Today the result was out. It's extra 400 million from the government, which I don't think it's covering, you know, obviously all of what Eneabba would take, and which implies that now Iluka actually have to contribute a bit more equity to get this construction going. It's actually more than what they have in terms of net cash just as of their last reporting. So I think the market right now is very cautious of what the government's stance is, whether Iluka is able to fund that extra cash needed right now, as well as just the project delivery of the Eneabba refinery, which is critically for Australia, because we have a good opportunity with critical mineral. And it's important in areas like defensive system, electric vehicles, and it's up to, you know, the combination of private sector as well as the government to decide whether we have a good enough system to actually kick this off.
And you finally, where do you see the opportunities for investors at the moment?
Opportunities right now we're seeing, as we discussed, the market has been pretty strong and a lot of sectors actually delivered very good return. And we're still watching sectors where you have probably experienced less rallies than the rest of the market, but offer opportunities and the fundamentals for actual EPS growth in 2025, particularly if the market actually has a correction later on, because the valuation right now for ASX 200 is quite high. The PE is at a level that hasn't seen for many, many years. It's 18 times right now. So sectors like defensive industrials or certain segments in healthcare. That said, we acknowledge that materials probably been pretty weak for a while, and that's probably a sector we're not doubling down at the moment, just given the uncertainties with China trade war and the implication for commodity demand.
It's Yu there from Blackmore Capital.
This SBS On The Money stream is provided for informational purposes only. The content in this stream should not be understood as constituting advice or a recommendation. It is not personal advice and it does not consider your personal circumstances or objectives. You should contact a licensed professional before making any financial decision.